The emergency lights of the United Earth Council chamber cast a bloody glow across Admiral Sarah Chen's torn uniform as she limped through the reinforced doors. Behind her, evacuation klaxons wailed their dire warning. The Kaveri blockade had been detected at the edge of the solar system. "Madam Admiral." Council President Torres started, rising from his seat. "We're in the middle of implementing Evacuation Protocol 7. Chen finished, her voice raw. "I know. I also know it won't work." She pulled a data crystal from her pocket, leaving crimson fingerprints on its surface. "Because they just killed my entire fleet." The chamber erupted in chaos. Chen's Third Fleet had been humanity's last major defensive force, positioned to protect the colonies. Its destruction meant billions of lives were now at the mercy of an alien race that had shown no interest in mercy. Order. Torres's voice cut through the pandemonium. "Admiral Chen, explain yourself." Chen plugged the crystal into the chamber's holoprojector. The air filled with the final moments of her flagship's battle, massive crystalline, Kaveri dreadnoughts moving with perfect precision, their energy weapons cutting through human ships like paper. But Chen wasn't watching the destruction. Her eyes were fixed on a strange pattern of electromagnetic fluctuations emanating from the Kaveri vessels. "Look at their response times," she said, manipulating the display to highlight the alien ship's movements. "Every action, every shot fired, every course correction, they're all precisely synchronized across their entire fleet." "We knew the Kaveri were hierarchical," Counselor Zhang interrupted. "Their queen mind controls everything. That's why we can't beat them. They have perfect coordination." "No." Chen's smile was fierce despite her injuries. "That's why they've already lost. Watch this." The display shifted to show a human corvette, engines dead, tumbling through the Kaveri formation. The alien ships maintained their perfect patterns until the corvette crashed into one of their screening vessels. The resulting explosion was minor, but the electromagnetic patterns went haywire. Their queen mind had to personally direct every ship's response to that random event, Chen explained. For 3.7 seconds, their entire fleet's coordination dropped by 60%. Because they're not just hierarchical, they're pathologically incapable of individual initiative. And that corvette's sensors gave us a deep look into their neural network before they destroyed it. She manipulated the display again, showing complex patterns of energy that pulsed between the Kaveri ships. Their perfect coordination isn't an advantage, it's a weakness. Their queen mind has to micromanage every response to every situation. The only reason they've beaten us so far is that we've been fighting exactly the way they expect us to fight. "And you have a better idea?" Torres asked, his tone skeptical but interested. Chen nodded. "Send one ship. Not our biggest, not our most powerful. We send our most unpredictable vessel, crewed by our most creative people. And we don't attack their ships. We attack their certainty. We show them something their rigid minds can't process: deliberate chaos." "One ship," Zhang scoffed. "Against their entire blockade. That's suicide." "No," Chen said, her eyes gleaming. "It's psychology. The Kaveri can handle any military strategy we throw at them because their queen mind can analyze and counter it. But their neural patterns show they have no defense against what they consider malfunction, random, unpredictable individual action. They literally cannot process it without direct input from their queen mind. And if we can force her to try to micromanage responses to enough chaos, we can overwhelm her." Torres finished, beginning to understand. "Exactly." Chen straightened despite her injuries. "The Kaveri see our individuality as our greatest weakness. They think our capacity for random action, for creativity, for improvisation, makes us inferior to their perfect order. They don't understand that chaos can have its own patterns, that disorder can be deliberate, that individual initiative can be stronger than central control." She gestured at the display, where the electromagnetic patterns still danced. "We've been trying to beat them at their own game. Perfect coordination, precise military maneuvers, but we're not playing to our strengths. Humanity's greatest advantage has always been our ability to adapt, to think independently, to embrace chaos, and make it work for us. The chamber was silent as the council processed her words. Outside, the evacuation sirens continued their mournful wail. "One ship," Torres said finally. "What are its chances?" Chen's smile was predatory. "If we try to fight them directly, 0. But if we show them something their queen mind can't categorize, can't control, can't predict, we might not just win the battle. We might break their entire worldview. Sometimes, Mr. President, the mouse can kill the python, if it knows exactly where to bite." She straightened her torn uniform. "I have a ship in mind. The UES Prometheus. Her captain's a tactical genius who thinks sideways, and her crew's been trained in experimental warfare techniques. Give me authorization, and I'll have them ready to launch in 6 hours." Torres looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of each council member. One by one, they nodded. "Do it," he said finally. "God help us all, but do it." Chen was already moving, her limp forgotten in her urgency. She had a crew to brief, a ship to prepare, and a war to win. Not with strength or speed or superior firepower, but with humanity's oldest and greatest weapon. The power to embrace chaos and make it dance. Captain Marcus Rodriguez stood in the Prometheus's observation deck, watching his crew's final training simulation through the reinforced windows. Outside, in the vacuum between the ship's quantum foam hull plates, his security teams were playing zero-G handball, with live plasma vents as obstacles. "They're certifiably insane," his XO, Dr. Maya Wong, said as she joined him at the window. "Just like you asked for." Rodriguez nodded, studying the deliberate chaos of his hand-picked crew. "How's the quantum foam responding?" "Better than expected." Wong pulled up a holographic display showing the ship's revolutionary superstructure. "The programmable matter is holding its new configurations even under stress. We can reshape the hull, change our sensor profile, even alter our mass distribution on the fly. The Kaveri won't be able to get a consistent reading on us." "And the crew?" Wong's smile was sharp. "They're embracing the concept of weaponized chaos with disturbing enthusiasm. Engineering is practicing what they call jazz protocols, deliberately introducing controlled system fluctuations that look like cascading failures from the outside. Communications has developed 30 different encryption algorithms that change randomly every 17 seconds. And medical has figured out how to make our life support signatures fluctuate so wildly that any scanning system will think we're simultaneously dead and experiencing a population explosion." Rodriguez watched as the security team's plasma-dodging game grew more elaborate, their movements becoming increasingly unpredictable while maintaining perfect situational awareness. These weren't just soldiers anymore. They were performance artists of military deception. "Show me the latest training results," he ordered. Wong projected another display, this one showing the Prometheus's recent war games against conventional tactical AIs. The ship's erratic behavior patterns had caused the artificial opponents to crash in an average of 12 minutes, their logic circuits unable to handle the deliberate inconsistency of the human responses. "The real test will be harder," Wong warned. "The Kaveri Queen Mind isn't just an AI. She's got 3 million years of rigid hierarchical thinking backing up her worldview. Breaking her will take more than just random chaos. It'll take orchestrated insanity. That's why we're here." Rodriguez turned from the window to face the bridge. The nerve center of his ship looked like a cross between a military command post and an avant-garde art installation. Crew members had personalized their stations with an eye toward maximum cognitive dissonance, creating an environment that would drive any traditional military observer mad. Lieutenant Sarah Chen, the Admiral's daughter, was running tactical scenarios at her weapons station, deliberately programming targeting solutions that looked like mistakes, but would actually work better than traditional approaches. Her console was covered in fractal patterns that seemed to shift every time you looked away. At Communications, Specialist James "Static" Murphy had turned his station into what he called a quantum jazz orchestra, broadcasting signals that appeared to be random noise, but contained perfectly coded messages hidden in the chaos. He worked while standing on his head, insisting it helped him think outside normal parameters. The ship's AI, nicknamed Murphy after the famous law, had been specially programmed to incorporate controlled randomness into its calculations. It could generate solutions that appeared to violate logic while actually operating on a higher level of strategic thinking. "Captain," Wong said quietly, "the crew's ready. But they need to know, what happens if we fail?" Rodriguez pulled up the classified briefing Admiral Chen had given him. The holographic display showed population statistics for the human colonies currently under Kaveri blockade. 3 billion lives, slowly being strangled by the alien embargo. "If we fail," he said, "those colonies run out of critical supplies in 2 weeks. If we fail, humanity loses its last chance to prove that our greatest perceived weakness, our unpredictability, is actually our greatest strength. If we fail." He let the words hang in the air. Everyone on the bridge knew the stakes. They'd all volunteered for this mission, knowing it might be one way. "Final system check," he ordered, straightening his deliberately asymmetrical uniform. "Show me our status." The main screen lit up with what appeared to be absolute gibberish, but Rodriguez and his crew could read the pattern in the chaos. Every system was operating at peak efficiency, disguised to look like they were on the verge of catastrophic failure. "Sir," Chen called from Tactical, "Admiral Chen is requesting permission to come aboard for final briefing." Rodriguez nodded. "Granted. And people, let's show her what controlled chaos really looks like." The crew snapped to attention, each in their own unique way, creating a display of military precision that somehow looked completely disordered while actually being perfectly coordinated. As he waited for the Admiral, Rodriguez touched the ship's quantum foam hull, feeling the microscopic vibrations of its constant reconfiguration. The Prometheus wasn't just a ship anymore. It was humanity's ultimate statement about the power of individual initiative. They were about to prove that sometimes the most powerful weapon isn't the biggest gun or the strongest shield, but the ability to think in ways your enemy can't even imagine. "Time to show the Kaveri," he whispered to his ship. "That chaos is just another word for freedom." The UES Prometheus dropped out of FTL directly between 2 Kaveri dreadnoughts, its quantum foam hull already shifting through 7 different configurations per second. Lieutenant Carlos "Lucky" Martinez, their ace pilot, had his feet up on his console and was steering with one hand while juggling plasma spheres with the other. "Contact," he announced cheerfully. 2 capital ships at point-blank range, actively violating 16 different tactical protocols and counting. The massive crystalline shapes of the Kaveri vessels loomed on either side, their perfect symmetry a stark contrast to the Prometheus's apparently chaotic approach. For a moment, nothing happened. The alien ships seemed frozen in confusion. "They're waiting for instructions," Dr. Wong reported from her station, monitoring the electromagnetic pulses that indicated Kaveri neural activity. "The Queen Mind hasn't decided how to categorize us yet." "Then let's give her something to think about," Rodriguez ordered. "Begin Operation Madhouse." The Prometheus's external speakers began broadcasting an eclectic mix of human cultural content. Everything from classical music to cooking shows to children's cartoons, all overlaid with what appeared to be tactical data encoded in interpretive dance patterns. The ship's quantum foam hull rippled and twisted, making it appear to be simultaneously breaking apart and reassembling itself. Martinez initiated what he called his drunken master flight pattern, a series of maneuvers that looked like catastrophic system failures, but were actually precisely calculated to map every weakness in the Kaveri formation. The ship spun and tumbled, its trajectory following mathematical patterns so complex they appeared random. "Sir," Ensign Park called from environmental control, genuine alarm in her voice. "I think I made a mistake with the atmospheric recyclers." Rodriguez turned sharply. Actual mistakes weren't part of the plan. Impact. The external vents are. Park swallowed hard. They're releasing atmosphere and patterns that spell out jokes in Kaveri mathematical notation. Wang's eyes widened as she checked her readings. Captain, the neural activity in the Kaveri fleet just spiked. They're trying to process humor for the first time in their species' history. Rodriguez grinned. Ensign Park, that's not a mistake. That's genius, incorporated into the pattern. Murphy, analyze those jokes and generate more. The ship's AI eagerly complied, adding layers of mathematical humor to their already chaotic broadcast. The Kaveri ships remained frozen, their perfect formation now seeming less like military precision and more like paralysis. Multiple targeting locks. Lieutenant Chen reported from Tactical, her voice casual as if discussing the weather. They're trying to get a weapons solution, but our quantum foam shifts are giving them 15 different target profiles. Their targeting computers are starting to show signs of logical errors. The bridge crew worked their stations with carefully orchestrated randomness. Each action was designed to appear meaningless while actually serving multiple hidden purposes. Communications Officer Murphy had begun transmitting what seemed like random static, but actually contained encrypted messages that would take the Kaveri years to realize were perfect replications of their own most classified codes. Status of Operation Madhouse, Rodriguez asked, watching the Kaveri dreadnoughts with predatory satisfaction. Phase 1 proceeding beyond expectations, Wang reported. The Queen Mind is attempting to analyze our behavior using standard military protocols. Every time she establishes a pattern, we change it. Every time she formulates a response, we're already doing something different. Her neural network is showing signs of increasing stress. Martinez executed another impossible maneuver, making the Prometheus appear to briefly exist in 3 places at once. Got some smaller ships trying to move into containment positions, he reported. Want me to give them the full performance? Do it, Rodriguez ordered. Show them why they call you lucky. The pilot's hands danced across his controls, and the Prometheus began what looked like a suicidal dive between the Kaveri vessels. At the last possible moment, the ship's quantum foam hull reconfigured itself into a shape that should have been physically impossible, slipping through gaps in the alien formation that didn't actually exist until the Prometheus created them. Neural activity in the fleet is becoming erratic, Wang announced with satisfaction. The Queen Mind is having to micromanage every ship's response to our movements. She's trying to maintain control of the entire battle network while simultaneously analyzing behavior that contradicts everything she believes about physical reality. Rodriguez watched as the Kaveri ships began to show the first signs of confusion, their perfect formation developing almost imperceptible gaps as their controlling intelligence struggled to process the unprocessable. Send the next signal, he ordered. Let's show them what happens when humanity really decides to embrace chaos. The Prometheus's quantum foam hull began to generate visual patterns that appeared to violate the laws of physics, while its broadcast shifted to include fragments of human dreams recorded by advanced neural interfaces. The Kaveri were about to learn that human imagination could be more devastating than any conventional weapon. They think they're facing a malfunctioning ship, Rodriguez said softly, watching the alien vessels struggle to maintain their perfect order. They're about to learn they're facing something far more dangerous, human creativity unleashed. The real battle was just beginning, and chaos was humanity's most powerful ally. Authorization granted, Captain Rodriguez announced to his crew. Operation Madhouse enters Phase 2. From this moment forward, you have one standing order: be unpredictable, but make it count. The crew of the Prometheus responded with a collective grin that would have sent any traditional military commander running for the nearest psychiatric evaluation team. They had trained for this moment, pushing the boundaries between genius and insanity until they discovered they were the same thing. In engineering, Chief Maria Santos initiated what she called her Jazz Protocol. The ship's power systems began cycling through patterns that appeared to indicate multiple simultaneous catastrophic failures. Plasma vented from the engines in elaborate fractal patterns that, when viewed from the right angle, spelled out increasingly complex mathematical jokes in Kaveri notation. Power signatures are driving their analysis systems crazy, Santos reported cheerfully. They can't decide if we're about to explode or achieve enlightenment. At the weapons station, Lieutenant Chen had reprogrammed their targeting systems to lock onto empty space in precise patterns that, taken together, created a three-dimensional chess game played in targeting solutions. Each move was technically a valid combat strategy, but executed in ways that violated every known principle of tactical doctrine. Their defensive systems are trying to predict our attack vectors, Chen reported. I've got them calculating probable trajectories for weapons we haven't even invented yet. Dr. Wang's eyes were fixed on her neural activity monitors, watching the Kaveri fleet's collective consciousness struggle with the mounting chaos. The Queen Mind is adapting faster than expected, she warned. She's starting to recognize some patterns in our randomness. Rodriguez nodded grimly. Then it's time to show them true chaos. Murphy, initiate the dead-iced protocol. The ship's AI practically buzzed with excitement as it began generating what appeared to be complete nonsense across all frequencies. But buried within the noise were perfectly encrypted tactical communications, hidden using encryption algorithms based on human abstract art. Security teams, Rodriguez called. Show them your rehearsed spontaneity. In response, the security teams began their carefully planned random activities. They staged impromptu zero-G ballet performances in the spaces between the hull plates, their movements creating electromagnetic patterns that interfered with Kaveri scanning systems. Others began playing musical instruments that had been deliberately modified to generate signals that matched Kaveri command frequencies. Sir, Wang's voice carried a note of urgency. The Queen Mind is attempting to establish a predictive algorithm for our behavior. She's processing our actions faster than anticipated. Rodriguez smiled. This was the moment they had prepared for. Launch the mimetic weapons. Throughout the ship, crew members began introducing genuine errors into their orchestrated chaos, but in ways that made it impossible to tell what was deliberate and what was actual mistake. The boundary between planned madness and true randomness dissolved completely. Communications Officer Murphy, still standing on his head, began broadcasting what appeared to be personal logs from the crew, except they were written in styles that progressively violated the rules of grammar, syntax, and eventually logic itself. Each entry contained hidden fractal patterns that forced the Kaveri analysis systems to recurse infinitely, trying to find meaning. Their ships are starting to show signs of confusion, Martinez reported from the helm, where he was now piloting the ship using a combination of interpretive dance and quantum probability calculations. Some of them are maintaining formation, but others are developing micro-variations in their positioning. They can't decide if we're a threat or a malfunction, or some kind of artistic statement. The Prometheus itself had become a work of abstract art in motion. Its quantum foam hull shifted through configurations that should have been impossible, creating shapes that seemed to exist in more dimensions than space allowed. The ship's very existence had become a challenge to the Kaveri worldview. Neural activity in the fleet is reaching critical levels, Wang announced. The Queen Mind is having to process so many variables that she's beginning to show signs of cognitive strain. But she frowned at her readings. There's something else. Some of the smaller ships are showing signs of individual neural activity. Rodriguez leaned forward. This was unexpected. And in chaos, the unexpected was opportunity. Explain. It's like. Wang's fingers flew over her console. It's like they're beginning to think for themselves, just a little. Our chaos isn't just overwhelming the Queen Mind. It's forcing some of her ships to process information independently because she can't handle it all. Perfect. Rodriguez's smile was fierce. Time for the coup de grace. Initiate the Rorschach maneuver. The Prometheus began to move in ways that defied not just military doctrine, but apparently physics itself. Its quantum foam hull generated patterns that looked like different things to different observers, forcing each Kaveri ship to make its own interpretation. And for the first time in their species' history, those interpretations began to differ. "Send them the final message," Rodriguez ordered. "Let's see how their perfect order handles a taste of true human creativity." The battle was about to enter its most crucial phase, and chaos itself had become their greatest ally. Deep within her crystalline throne chamber in the heart of Kaveri space, the Queen Mind experienced something entirely new: pain. Her neural network, perfectly evolved over millions of years to process and control every aspect of her vast civilization, was encountering patterns it couldn't categorize, behaviors it couldn't predict, and chaos it couldn't contain. The human ship's actions defied all logic. It moved like a damaged vessel, yet its maneuvers showed impossible precision. It broadcast signals that seemed random but contained disturbing hints of deeper meaning. Its very structure appeared to change from moment to moment, violating what she had always known about physical reality. Impossible. She transmitted to her fleet, her usually perfect neural signals showing signs of distortion. Maintain formation. Ignore their irrelevant behavior patterns. But nothing about the human ship's behavior was truly irrelevant. Every random action forced her to analyze, every chaotic pattern demanded categorization, every impossible movement required a response. Her perfect control was becoming a perfect trap. Aboard the Prometheus, Dr. Wang's eyes widened as she monitored the Kaveri neural networks. "Captain, we're seeing something unprecedented. The Queen Mind's neural patterns are showing signs of frustration." Rodriguez leaned forward in his chair, which he'd recently modified to hover and spin randomly. "Explain." "Her signals to the fleet are becoming less precise. There are micro-variations in her command patterns, delays in response times. It's like—" Wang searched for the right words. "It's like she's developing a headache." "Then it's time for the migraine," Rodriguez decided. "Lieutenant Martinez, execute Operation Wonderland." The ace pilot grinned and initiated a series of maneuvers that made the Prometheus appear to fold through dimensions that shouldn't exist. The ship's quantum foam hull reconfigured itself into shapes that contradicted Euclidean geometry, while its energy signatures suggested it was simultaneously powered up and completely dead. "Neural spike," Wang reported excitedly. "The Queen Mind just tried to categorize our movements using 17 different tactical databases simultaneously. She's burning through processing power trying to make sense of nonsense." In her crystalline chamber, the Queen Mind felt her perfect certainty beginning to crack. The human chip's actions couldn't be random. They were too precise, too coordinated. But they couldn't be planned either. They violated every principle of military doctrine, physics, and logic she had ever known. She diverted more processing power to analysis, pulling resources from her control of the fleet. Immediately, she felt her grip on her ships begin to weaken. But she couldn't stop analyzing. The patterns had to mean something. Order had to exist within the chaos. Her civilization was built on the principle that everything could be categorized, controlled, predicted. The Prometheus chose that moment to execute its most devastating maneuver yet. It appeared to crash directly into one of her dreadnoughts, only to phase through it using its quantum foam technology, leaving behind energy patterns that exactly mimicked Kaveri command signals, but reversed. "Direct hit to her worldview," Wang announced with satisfaction. Her neural network just experienced a logic cascade. She's trying to resolve the paradox of our existence using pure reason, and it's forcing her to question her own fundamental assumptions. Rodriguez nodded grimly. "Now we show her that chaos isn't just the absence of order, it's the presence of possibility. All stations, execute protocol imagination." The Prometheus began broadcasting on all frequencies, not just random signals but human creativity in its purest form. Children's drawings that violated perspective. Poetry that broke the rules of language. Music that ignored harmony yet created new forms of beauty. Each transmission was designed to force the Queen Mind to confront the power of unrestricted human thought. In her chamber, the Queen Mind felt something she had never experienced before: doubt. Her perfect hierarchical system, evolved over millions of years, was being undone by a single ship that refused to follow any rules, even the rules of reality itself. How? She transmitted to her fleet, her signal showing clear signs of strain. How can they function without perfect order? How can they coordinate without central control? How can they exist while violating every principle of logical behavior? The answer came back to her through the chaos of the Prometheus's transmissions. They weren't just surviving without perfect order. They were thriving because of its absence. Their creativity, their adaptability, their individual initiative weren't weaknesses to be eliminated. They were strengths that her perfect system couldn't comprehend. For the first time in the history of her species, the Queen Mind faced a force that couldn't be controlled because it didn't want to be controlled. And in that realization, she felt her perfect certainty begin to shatter. All stations, prepare for Operation Butterfly, Captain Rodriguez announced, his voice carrying a mix of anticipation and fierce determination. Remember what chaos theory teaches us. A butterfly flapping its wings can cause a hurricane. We're about to flap very hard. The crew of the Prometheus responded with coordinated disorder that would have made any chaos theorist proud. Each station began implementing protocols that had been designed to push the Kaveri Queen Mind past her breaking point. Initiating Quantum Broadcast Array, Communications Officer Murphy announced, his console now reconfigured to resemble a mad scientist's pipe organ, broadcasting in 3,000 different formats simultaneously. Each one is designed to trigger the Kaveri's instinctive need to categorize and control. The ship's transmission began flooding Kaveri space with an impossible array of signals. Classical music played backward and encoded with tactical data. Children's nursery rhymes translated into advanced mathematics. Philosophy lectures delivered in binary code that somehow managed to rhyme in 7 different languages simultaneously. At her tactical station, Lieutenant Chen had reprogrammed their weapons systems to generate targeting solutions that looked like abstract art. Multiple Kaveri ships are attempting to analyze our weapons configurations, she reported with satisfaction. Their tactical computers are starting to show signs of cognitive dissonance. Dr. Wang's eyes were fixed on her neural activity monitors. The Queen Mind is trying to process everything at once. Her neural network is operating at unprecedented levels. She's attempting to analyze and categorize each transmission individually while maintaining control of her fleet. Rodriguez nodded grimly. Time for the second butterfly. Deploy the Quantum Eye. Deep within the Prometheus's systems, their specialized artificial intelligence began generating what they had dubbed weaponized creativity. Art so abstract and emotionally charged that it caused cascading logic failures in any system that tried to analyze it using pure reason. The AI is generating quantum-entangled poetry, Murphy reported, his grin visible even though he was now operating his station while doing a handstand. Each line simultaneously makes perfect sense, and no sense at all. The Kaveri computers are trying to translate it using every known linguistic database simultaneously. The effect on the Kaveri fleet was immediate and dramatic. Ships began moving with slight irregularities, their perfect formation showing tiny breaks as their controlling intelligence struggled to maintain cohesion while processing the flood of uncategorizable information. Neural activity in the fleet is becoming chaotic, Wang announced. The Queen Mind is experiencing massive processing overloads. She's trying to maintain direct control of every ship while simultaneously analyzing our transmissions, predicting our movements, and understanding our apparent violations of physics. The Prometheus itself had become a symphony of deliberate disorder. Its quantum foam hull shifted through configurations that should have been impossible, each change synchronized with the transmissions in ways that suggested patterns but revealed none. Multiple Kaveri vessels showing signs of weapons activation, Chen reported suddenly. They're firing, but their targeting solutions are degrading. The Queen Mind can't maintain perfect control of their weapons while processing our chaos. Martinez's hands danced across his controls as he guided the Prometheus through the storm of semi-accurate fire. They're shooting at where they think we should be based on normal physics, he reported cheerfully. Too bad we stopped making sense about 10 minutes ago. Sir, Wang's voice carried a note of triumph. We're seeing something unprecedented. Some of the Kaveri ships are starting to show signs of independent neural activity. The Queen Mind's control is slipping enough that they're being forced to think for themselves. Rodriguez leaned forward. This was the moment they had been waiting for, the first crack in the Kaveri's perfect hierarchical system. Time for the killing stroke. All stations, execute protocol paradox. The Prometheus began broadcasting directly on the frequencies the Kaveri used for their neural network, not trying to break in, but simply introducing elements of human consciousness, imagination, intuition, creativity, into their perfectly logical system. The Queen Mind is trying to directly interface with our systems, Wang reported. She's attempting to impose order on our chaos directly. Rodriguez's smile was fierce. She just made her final mistake. Let her in, but show her everything. Show her what human creativity really means. The battle had reached its critical point, and the butterfly's wings were about to create their hurricane. The moment the Queen Mind attempted to interface directly with the Prometheus's systems, Dr. Wang's fingers flew across her console with practiced precision. She's in, Wang announced, her voice tense with concentration. Initiating Protocol Pandora. The ship's quantum AI, preloaded with carefully curated samples of human consciousness, began feeding directly into the Kaveri neural network. Not attacking, not trying to override or control, simply sharing the unfiltered experience of human thought. The effect was instantaneous and devastating. The Queen Mind, who had never experienced anything but perfect logical order, suddenly found herself drowning in intuition. Human emotions flooded her neural network. Joy, fear, love, anger, wonder, doubt. Each one carrying with it 1,000 years of cultural context that defied categorical analysis. Neural activity is off the charts, Wang reported, her eyes wide as she watched the readings. She's experiencing human creativity in real time. The concept of going with your gut is hitting her like a quantum torpedo. In the space around them, the massive Kaveri fleet began to move erratically. Some ships maintained their positions, desperately clinging to their last orders. Others drifted, their controlling intelligence overwhelmed by concepts it had never been designed to process. What's happening to her? Rodriguez asked, watching the chaos spread through the enemy formation. Imagine someone who's never seen color suddenly being shown a rainbow, Wang explained. Now multiply that by every human emotion, every creative impulse, every irrational but brilliant leap of intuition our species has ever made. She's experiencing imagination for the first time in her species' history. The Prometheus's quantum AI continued its relentless feed, showing the Queen Mind what it meant to dream, to wonder, to create without knowing the outcome. It showed her Earth's greatest works of art, its most moving music, its most profound poetry, not as data to be analyzed, but as experiences to be felt. Her neural network is starting to fragment, Wang reported. The strain of processing pure creativity is forcing her to compartmentalize. She's starting to think in parallel. Rodriguez leaned forward. What does that mean for her fleet? The ships. Wang's voice held a note of wonder. They're beginning to think independently. Her perfect control is breaking down not because we're destroying it, but because she can't maintain it while processing human consciousness. She's being forced to delegate, to let go. Throughout the Kaveri fleet, ships began moving in ways that showed the first glimmers of individual initiative. Some maintained formation out of habit. Others began to drift in patterns that suggested curiosity rather than confusion. Multiple ships are attempting to communicate directly with each other, Murphy reported from communications. They're bypassing the Queen Mind completely, developing their own protocols on the fly. It's like watching a species evolve in real time. The Queen Mind's presence in their systems was changing too. Her attempts to impose order had given way to something else, a desperate need to understand. The Prometheus's AI oblige. showing her memories of human children learning to think creatively, of artists finding their voice, of scientists making intuitive leaps that led to breakthrough discoveries. She's not fighting it anymore, Wang said softly. She's learning. The concept of individual thought is rewriting her entire worldview. The perfect hierarchy that evolved over millions of years is being transformed in minutes because she's finally understanding that chaos isn't the enemy of order. It's the source of growth. Around them, the Kaveri fleet had ceased all hostile actions. The ships hung in space like newly awakened beings, each one beginning to process information independently for the first time in their existence. Send the final package, Rodriguez ordered quietly. The Prometheus transmitted one last burst of data, not tactical information or cultural records, but something far more profound. The history of human mistakes, showing how error and failure had led to their greatest achievements, how chaos and uncertainty had driven them to adapt, to create, to become more than they had been. The Queen Mind is experiencing what I can only describe as an epiphany, Wang reported, her voice filled with awe. She's finally understanding that perfect control isn't perfect at all. It's stagnation, and her entire civilization is changing because of it. The battle was over, but something far more important had begun. The evolution of an entire species from rigid hierarchy to creative freedom. And it had started with a single ship that dared to weaponize chaos itself. In the aftermath of the battle, the Prometheus hung in space, surrounded by Kaveri ships that were experiencing individual thought for the first time in their species' history. Captain Rodriguez stood at his observation window, watching as the crystalline vessels moved in patterns that were no longer perfectly coordinated, but showed something far more valuable. Initiative. Final neural activity report, Dr. Wang announced from her station, her voice holding a mixture of exhaustion and wonder. The Queen Mind's original neural network has completely transformed. Instead of a rigid hierarchy, we're seeing something closer to a collaborative network. She's not controlling her ships anymore. She's coordinating with them. Rodriguez nodded, understanding the profound implications. And the ships themselves. Developing rapidly, Wang replied, studying her readings. They're creating their own neural patterns, unique to each vessel. Some are focusing on tactical analysis, others on scientific observation, and a few, she laughed in surprise, a few are actually attempting to recreate our chaos patterns, experimenting with randomness like children discovering a new toy. Communications Officer Murphy, finally right side up at his station, grinned as he monitored the increasing chatter between Kaveri vessels. They're talking to each other directly, sharing their experiences, asking questions. One of them just tried to tell a joke. It was terrible, but the attempt itself is revolutionary. The Queen Mind's presence was still there in their systems, but it had changed dramatically. Instead of attempting to impose order, she was observing, learning, evolving. Her rigid certainty had been replaced by something far more powerful, curiosity. Captain, Lieutenant Chen called from Tactical. We're receiving a transmission from the Queen Mind. It's different from her previous communications. Rodriguez straightened. Put it through. The message that filled their screens wasn't the precise, logically structured command they had come to expect from Kaveri communications. Instead, it was almost poetic in its complexity, layered with nuance and, surprisingly, emotion. We understand now, the Queen Mind transmitted. For millions of years, we sought perfection through absolute control. We saw your individualism as a weakness, your creativity as a flaw, your chaos as a disease. We were wrong. Perfect order is stagnation. True strength lies in the ability to adapt, to change, to grow through disorder. The message continued, becoming more profound. You could have destroyed us with conventional weapons, struck at our ships, our stations, our worlds. Instead, you chose to show us a better way. You used chaos not to break us, but to free us. You turned our greatest perceived strength, our perfect control, into an opportunity for growth. Throughout the Kaveri fleet, ships were beginning to move with increasing confidence, each one developing its own patterns while maintaining loose coordination with the others. It was like watching a symphony where each instrument had suddenly discovered it could compose its own music while still contributing to the greater whole. We request, the Queen Mind transmitted, teachers, not to show us how to maintain order, but to help us understand chaos, to learn the art of individual thought, the power of creativity, the strength that comes from embracing uncertainty. Will you help us? Rodriguez looked at his crew, seeing the pride and amazement on their faces. They had come prepared for war, but had achieved something far greater: the peaceful transformation of an entire civilization. We would be honored, he transmitted back. But you should know, we're still learning ourselves. Every day brings new chaos, new challenges, new opportunities for growth. That's what makes it exciting. The Queen Mind's response carried a trace of what could only be described as humor. Then we will learn together. Our perfect order has evolved for millions of years. Perhaps it is time to see what a few centuries of creative chaos can achieve. As if to demonstrate their new understanding, the Kaveri ships began moving in a display that combined their traditional precision with elements of randomness. It was beautiful in a way their previous perfect formations had never been, alive with possibility and individual expression. Send a message to Admiral Chen, Rodriguez ordered, watching the display with satisfaction. Tell her that Operation Madhouse was a success, but not in the way we expected. We didn't just win a battle, we made first contact. Real first contact, mind to mind, chaos to order, creativity to control. And both sides are better for it. The Prometheus's quantum foam hull shifted one last time, forming patterns that reflected both human chaos and Kaveri precision, a symbol of two civilizations learning from each other. The war was over, not through destruction but through understanding. And in the space between order and chaos, something new and wonderful was being born. Sometimes, Rodriguez mused, watching the Kaveri ships experiment with their newfound freedom, the bravest thing isn't fighting the enemy. It's showing them they don't have to be the enemy at all. The future stretched out before them, full of possibilities that neither humans nor Kaveri could predict, and that they all agreed was exactly as it should be.